Jams, jams, jams. Picture books and jams. Welcome, everybody, to PBJamz. Music and picture books. What a perfect sandwich. Squish them all together. What a yummy snack.
All right, PB peeps, good morning or afternoon or evening, whenever it is you are joining us for this PBJamz. We are super excited, and technically this is our birthday episode. So we've been doing this for a whole year as of this episode. I know, woo! So this is like 30 episodes in, and man, it's been a fabulous year. And I'm loving doing this and planning to keep on doing it for a very long time. So thank you for continuing to hang with us as we bring you beautiful literature for kids that has musical connections. And today, Robyn McGrath is here, who has a wonderful picture book biography about Dolly Parton. And Dolly is everywhere right now. Like, she is just absolutely prolific.
Mm-hmm.
So what a great time and she just celebrated her birthday last month in January. So she's almost a birthday buddy with us. She's close. But Robyn, thank you for being here and talking with us about Dolly and your book.
Thank you so much for having me, Tawny. Yes, I am very excited to share Dolly with y'all. And celebrate your birthday. Happy 1 year.
Yes, hard to believe it's been a whole year, but we have covered a lot of ground in that year. It's been fun. Yeah.
You have a lot of great resources out there. So
thank you. I hope people find them helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you're right. Dolly is everywhere. I think most recently she now has a dog clothing line.
Oh, really?
If you've seen this,
I have not.
Yes. So besides, her working with Duncan Hines, and having all the cake mixes, she now has a dog, a pet line too.
That is hilarious. She is so funny. It's interesting because she's like one of the best storytellers that I know. She will just wrap you up in her story. I don't know if you've seen the clip. I thought this was so hilarious. It was with Jimmy Fallon. She and Jimmy Fallon did a song together for Christmas.
Yeah.
And so he had her on the show and they were just talking and yapping it up, and it was so fun. And then she was telling him about this story. Have you seen this clip at all? Like, you have to go watch it. It's so funny. So she's telling him about this bear in Gatlinburg or Pigeon Forge, where she was performing. And anyway, she said, when I was growing up, we had this gas station and they had this bear. And so she was telling about this bear, and she just got him so good on a joke. And you just have to go and watch his reaction. Was so, like, he was like bowing down because she just got him so good. But she just has this way of just drawing you into her world and telling you this story and just making you right there.
Yeah, and she's so whip smart too, right?
She's smart. Yes.
I love it that she's like, my favorite one I heard the other day was like, I'm not a dumb blonde because I'm not dumb and I'm not blonde. Like, that's right.
Yes. Yeah, I love at the end of the book where you have those little Dolly quips, Dolly at the end, and she's full of them. You're right. All the time. All the time.
Another favorite, and one thing I love about her, she pokes fun at herself. So when she says, like, it takes a lot of money to look this cheap, she's always got one up on everybody. She's not going to let you poke fun at her before she'll.
That's right.
Herself. And I just admire that so much about her.
Yeah. I think her humble beginnings, just really, she's been able to bring that with her. And it keeps her humble, even though she's experienced all this success, and she is just able to laugh at herself in a really fun way that just invites you to laugh with her and not at her.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I like that.
Yeah. So tell us how did you come to write about Dolly? Where did the inspiration for this book come from?
Well, I admire her for so many reasons. Fabulous businesswoman, whip smart, amazing singer, right?
Totally.
And so I actually was like, I think I want to write a picture book biography about Dolly. So I researched, and all I found was picture books that were like her lifespan, so birth to like where she is now. And those weren't doing it for me because I like very lyrical picture books. So I actually pitched it to my agent and said, what do you think about me writing about Dolly? Because I like to run my nonfiction ideas by my agent.
Sure. Yeah.
Before I dive in and spend months and months, some people spend years, right? Working on this. So they were like, do it. So I just kind of dove in, and I mean, my first book, or my first manuscript, was that bad first draft, and it was the entire lifespan, right? What I've seen, and I was like, this is not what I want. So I had to keep kind of distilling it down to like, okay, but she's done so much. How do I narrow it down to like this slice of life? Because she is so prolific in like everything she does.
Everything, yes.
And and I really I was really drawn to, her imagination library, and the fact that it started in honor of her dad, who was illiterate and he never learned to read. And so part of me wanted to like the story to take that route.
Yep.
And I think it might have at one point. The story kind of went all over the place.
I bet. Yeah.
But that wasn't the story that was to be told here. So yeah, it was hard. It was a journey to get it to where it's at, for sure.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great point, because she is so prolific in so many different areas, and that would be really hard, whether you're writing a lifespan, because how in the world would you possibly fit all of that into a lifespan book? But even like you say, with a slice of life book, which slice do you choose? I mean, there's raspberry, blueberry, peach, apple. I mean, which one do you go with? Yeah.
And, everything I kept reading was that, she was teased. But what I kept coming back to is that refrain that's in the book is when she's told, you're just a kid. And every time she's like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to go to the Opry. And people just kept saying, you can't, you're just a kid. And so I thought, okay, there's the story, right? That kids can connect to. And as a former elementary school reading and writing teacher and an elementary school counselor, I write with the thought in mind of how can a teacher use this in the classroom?
Yes.
And I think that's really important, because that's how books are selling these days, right? We want our teachers to use them in the classroom. And so for me, I was like, oh, dreaming, right?
Yeah.
Setting goals. That was one of my favorite lessons to teach when I was an elementary counselor. And how do we set those goals? And Dolly is like, the end all be all of dreaming and setting goals.
Yeah.
She has spent her life doing that, and she's still doing that.
Yeah. And making them come true, like meeting every one of those goals head on, and her persistence and her perseverance, which are another couple of topics that you could certainly dig into as a teacher.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, right? Because she keeps being told no, kids, and she just is like, nope, I'm gonna keep doing it, and this is what I want.
For sure.
But without being, she's not, super aggressive either.
That's right. She still comes across as a super nice person. Yeah. I mean, because I think she is a super nice person, right? I mean, you can't fake that. I can fake the hair, but you can't fake that.
Good point. Yes.
Yeah. So you've mentioned a little bit about your rough draft versus the meandering journey that this took. Can you talk a little bit more about that publishing journey, and as far as the writing process, and then the actual journey to publication and how that came about?
Yeah. So this was my second nonfiction picture book I'd ever written. So I was still really new to this, which is why I think there was so much meandering. My first nonfiction that I wrote actually was how I got my agent. And then so when I wrote this one, I decided I would research everything I could for 1 week. I got all my books from the library. And I just sat down and dove in and read everything I could. And so I spend a week just solid researching, where I throw myself into life, right? I was listening to Dolly music every day. And sometimes maybe it's 2 weeks, right? And Dolly might have been 2 weeks of just because
Right.
and then I
Yeah.
spent a week writing.
Uh-huh.
And then I kind of take that really bad rough draft and say, okay, where are their holes? Where do I want to know more? And then I research more.
Mhm.
And I kind of repeat that until I say, okay, I think my critique group can see this, or I want someone else to look at it, which is that vulnerable piece I kind of talk about in my writing tips, which is really scary. And so I have them look at it, and then they see where there's holes, or I love it when my critique group will come back and have more questions for me, because that will help me
Right.
go back out and do more research. So then I just kind of keep repeating that process. And for Dolly, I started writing this manuscript in April, I think it was like April 2019. And we had it out on submission by that November.
Okay.
And then we sold it in January 2020.
Okay.
So it went pretty fast.
It did. Yeah.
But it was like 6 solid months of just buckled down. It's like all I could work on. And sometimes I think that's hard with nonfiction, is like I get kind of tunnel vision and all my other projects kind of fall away because you're just in it. It's hard to get out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a list a mile long for Saturday of just stuff I needed to do, writerly stuff and other stuff. And then I saw a little clip on Facebook about something, and I was like, oh, my writer antenna, started tingling, my spidey sense, started tingling. And I'm like, oh, I need to know more. And so I go down this whole rabbit hole. So, and like, yeah, everything else just went to the side for the day. But it was pretty cool because I wrote a draft that I did not intend to write. So, those are just nice little moments. Yeah. Yeah.
Congratulations. That's
I know.
something
I love it.
great, right?
Yeah. I think I'm going to send it in for the Valentine. Like, it's just perfect for that little contest. And so, yeah, so it was not wasted at all. It was good timing. But yeah, I get it. Because once you get your head stuck in something, like, it's just really hard to work on more than one thing when it's something that's so engaging, really.
Mm-hmm.
Intriguing. Yeah. So let's talk about the musical connections. Now, obviously with Dolly, there's a lot of musical connections, but talk about, from your viewpoint, what are the musical connections in the book? And do you have experience as a musician? What do you bring to the table as a music lover or a musician yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have no musical talent. I have never played a musical instrument. I grew up with my mom playing the piano.
Oh.
And then I grew up, my dad had a major collection of vinyl records. And so, of course, I always heard Dolly and Kenny, being played on vinyl. And I think the closest I ever got was my ballet teacher told me I had great musicality.
Oh, very nice.
That.
Absolutely.
But I do not have any musical talent. Whereas like my family, even my kids can sit at the piano and hear and make something happen, and I just can't. So I think that for me, that was the other piece of Dolly's story, was I'm not a musician, and I didn't grow up what she calls dirt poor, right? And I didn't have 11 siblings. I was an only child. So there was a lot of things where I was like, how do I connect with Dolly? And I think that's so important when we write our stories, is how do I connect with this person? And so for me, it wasn't the music, but it was the fact that she was a dreamer, and she was always writing. And as a kid, I was always keeping a journal, and I was always writing, and I was always setting goals for myself. And so the more I researched, I was like, okay, this is why I can tell this story, because that's how I connect to it. I don't have the musical talent, but the story's also right about dreaming and setting goals and going after them. So that's a great question, because you have to dig deep sometimes as a writer.
Yeah, but you're right. That is a great place to connect with her. I was watching a YouTube video the other day, and it had said Dolly Parton's surprise guest, and they were doing this thing up in Newport Newport, Rhode Island, and they had, like, it was this women's power weekend or something, and they were doing all this women's music. And then one of the singers actually knew Dolly and had gotten her to come, and so nobody knew she was going to be there, and so she came out. And I know, right? Like, what an amazing moment would that have been? And like, these girls got to sing on stage with Dolly, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, how wonderful would that be? But she was just like, as she's talking through her songs and stuff, she says, oh yeah, one night my husband and I just had a fight, and so I just went in there and wrote a song, just to tell him what for. And it's like, that was just such a part of her life, the writing part, and most of the songs that she has released, she wrote or co-wrote many of them. She's such a prolific writer. And so that's an incredible way into the story, even if you're not a musician. And for all of us who are writers, yeah, we definitely have a connection with Dolly, because she's a very prolific writer.
Yeah. And I mean, she's even said in like so many of the books that she wrote to express her feelings.
Yes.
And I'm a child therapist, and so I'm all about expressing those feelings. And the writer, I think and I'm a huge journaler too. So
right. Well, and the whole coat of many colors thing. I mean, writing to process those feelings. I mean, what a great mentor text for kids that are dealing with something difficult, right? That song that she wrote, those lyrics. I mean, that's just a great mentor text for them to take something challenging and turn it into something positive, which is what she was so good at.
Yeah. Really
in so many ways. Yeah. So if Dolly were sitting here with us today, what do you think she would want everybody to take away from this book, from her story?
Yeah. I mean, I would think she would want people to know she worked really hard to get where she was at, that it wasn't an easy thing for her. She would want them to know, never give up on your dreams, I think would be a big one. But I think she would also add, because in the book, it shows that Dolly had a lot of family support. She comes from a family of musicians,
right?
And her uncle and everyone supported her. But I think she would also say that besides family support, you'd have to believe in yourself first. I think that would be a really big one from her is, you can have all the family support you want, but if you don't believe in yourself, you can't get there.
Yeah. And I think when you were talking earlier about how good she is at just poking fun of herself, and you can only do that if you have tremendous self-confidence, right? Like, if you go at it without that, it's going to fall flat. But she can do that so well, because she does come in confident and believing in herself and knowing her capabilities. But then she can flip that around and laugh at her lack, the places where she's not quite where she wants to be, or where other people think she should be. Like, she can meet you there, and she can laugh about that, because she knows exactly where she thrives and excels. Yeah.
She's just so self-aware too, right?
Very much so. Yeah.
Believing in yourself, I think, would be her first big one.
Got you. I love, so one of my favorite things about the book is the country flavor that you weave, the language. You mentioned earlier about more of a lyrical take, and I love that about this book. I love that it is very lyrical, and there's onomatopoeia in there, and there's that kind of thing, but there's also this very Dolly-ish, country twang, but respectfully. Sometimes, I'm a country girl, I'm Carolina born and bred, and if you can't tell by the accent, then, well, but sometimes, people just so overdo the country twang thing, or whatever. But it was done very respectfully, and very much like you feel like you're just sitting there in a living room or in a rocking chair with Dolly, just, and just hearing her talk. And so I loved that, how you really captured her voice well in how you use the vernacular, and those pieces really nicely done.
I appreciate that. I mean, it definitely took some work. And there was even, later in the editing process, I remember even the copy editor came back and was like, I think we should say this a different way, because it came across, So thankfully, I'm not the only one that has eyes on this book, that someone could come in later and say, maybe this doesn't sound quite right, or
Quite the way you want it to.
it
Yeah.
could come off as perceived differently. And so like, okay, cut that word here,
Yeah.
it's nice to have lots of eyes on it.
Well, we talk all the time in the writing industry about how making a book is I laugh because I say I never knew writing was a team sport. Like you don't think of it that way. But it very much is a team sport, and there are so many people involved in the making of a book. And you mentioned earlier your critique partners, and and your groups that you take them to, and then your editor, and then there's so many people that come into this process alongside us to help us put out a really great book.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think you can do it alone. I am so thankful for my critique group that is like, oh no, this doesn't work, or you should try it this way. I mean, you have to, like I said, be vulnerable, and you get to take what you want of it. And then it's fun when I get to send it to my agent and she says, oh, try it this way. And I'm like, okay, we'll try it another way. And then, you still send it out on submission, and you still have editors come back that say, oh, I like it, but let's try it this way. And so, I mean, the editing process never ends. So thankfully I've learned to enjoy that, which kind of was my other tip too, is like, enjoy the process, because you're in it for the long haul. If it doesn't end with like selling a book, I mean, it keeps going on.
Well, for sure it does. And then beyond that, then there's the promoting the book, and then there's going out and the talking about it and doing interviews like this one that we're doing right now, and sharing, and then you're just going back and revisiting, and that's like a whole nother level of continuing. I mean, in a way you're kind of continuing to write the book. You're adding, and you're pulling out pieces to focus on, and so it does, you're right, it just continues. That book will always be a piece of you. That's why we call them our babies, right?
Gosh, I know, my book baby.
Yeah, they probably, I'm not there yet. I haven't gotten that far, but I'm sure they feel that way because you've spent so much time with them in all the different levels. Yeah.
Well, and then when you sell a book, so let's say I sold it in January of 2020, it didn't come out till June of 2022. So it's like having a baby when people are constantly like, when is it due? Dude, 2 more years, a year and a half, a year.
Right.
Okay, right. 6 months. It feels like having a baby.
That waiting, yeah, for sure. That's funny. When's your due date? That's
and then
funny.
They ask, when's the next one? And you're like, oh.
Well, see, and that's the perfect segue. So when is the next one, and what can we expect? What's coming next for you, Robyn?
Look at that. My next one I have right here. Oh, it's like this comes out in August 28th, and it's called There's Always Room for One More.
Nice.
And it's a book about a grandfather coming to live with a family and coming to get a bigger table. So this one is fiction. And that one comes out in August, and then in May 2024, right? I have to think of the dates.
Right.
Is my next nonfiction picture book about Agatha Christie.
Oh yeah, I saw that one.
Really excited about that one too. And I just got to see a little bit of some sketches the other day, so I was very excited. And then I just signed for a 4th picture book, unannounced. I can't say, but I will just hint that it's another musician.
Oh, nice.
So that will be 2025.
Okay. We might have to have a reprise visit from you in 2025 for PBJamz.
So another musician. And again, I kind of had to dig deep and, find what my connection was to that story. So I can't wait for that one too. So
well, it sounds like you have a very full plate and a lot of wonderful things coming down the pipeline, little by little and bit by bit. That's how it happens.
Yeah, nice, slow and steady.
And that's a great way. And that's awesome.
Everyone, phrase that keeps coming to mind is everyone's like, writing is not a race, it's a marathon. And I'm like, oh yes, it is.
For sure. No sprinting, because you're right. I mean, it takes, and we talked about that with Dolly earlier, how she, this book really alludes to her persistence and perseverance. And that for sure is a lesson for all of us who are in the writing trenches, because that is full of persistence and perseverance.
And like patience, right? So like when I signed the contract in January, and my husband's like, what, 2025? I'm like, seems like a long way away, but it'll be here.
It goes by so quickly, doesn't it? Yeah. Awesome. Was there anything else that you would like to share with the viewers and listeners before we sign out officially?
I can't think of anything, but I hope that everyone loves Dolly out there, and DM me. I'm on Instagram. You can follow my adventures there and let me know how much you love Dolly.
Awesome. And that's a great segue. I will link everything up at the bottom of the episode. So when you finish watching this wonderful interview with Robyn, I hope you'll check out all her links to her social media and where you can buy Dolly. But also, let me just remind you, my PB peeps, that we can celebrate and honor our authors in a lot of ways, and certainly buying their books is a great way, but it's not the only way. So if your pocketbook is tight and you can't purchase, do a request at your library, either your public library or your school library. Those reviews are so helpful on Amazon and Goodreads or Barnes & Noble or wherever else you do reviews. And I cannot overestimate the ability of word of mouth to really propel an author's success. So when you read Dolly, if you would share it with somebody else who loves Dolly, with a teacher who loves Dolly, with a kid, there's always kids with old souls. I mean, those of us who teach, there's kids with old souls, and people like Dolly have stood the test of time because she is such a kid at heart, and she's going to continue connecting with kids. So when you have that kid or that teacher or that person who is a Dolly Parton fan, recommend this book to them by word of mouth. Share it out on your socials. If you do book clubs with your kids at school, this would be a great one. My music teacher friends, and your music teacher friends, make sure you share it with them. So lots of ways you can support our authors on PBJamz, and we hope that you will absolutely do that, because this book is so much fun, and Dolly is everywhere, and this will give kids another way to relate to her when they see her, because they're gonna see her because she's everywhere. Rock and roll albums, she's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, people. I mean, she's everywhere. She's like Santa Claus. She is everywhere.
I appreciate you saying all the great ways that you can support our authors, and definitely libraries are a great way too.
Yeah.
So
For
I like
sure. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here, Robyn, and thank you guys for joining us, and we will see you next time on PBJamz. Keep the music playing.
Bye.
PBJamz, yummy books and music. PBJamz, reading, writing, teaching. PBJamz, what a yummy treat. Jamming PBs all the time. PBJamz, jams, jams, jams. Picture books and jams. We'll see you next time for